Why do we even have these nasty meetings? Well, what caused everything to go from great to horrific in a matter of seconds? I honestly can't even believe my pastor would treat somebody that way. What did I do to deserve that?
The Fresh Church Podcast.
Hey everyone, well, welcome to the show. I'm Pastor Tony. Thanks for joining us today as we discuss surviving staff meetings. We've all had them, that terrible, horrible meeting experience where you end up walking out defeated, beat up, and ready to quit. How do you survive in ministry when you feel like everything is working against you? How do you support people who don't seem to support you? How do you keep smiling when you've just been stabbed in the back? What can I do to ensure that I'm a survivor despite the struggles of church meetings? Do you remember when you got hired for the first time in church world? You were so excited to be involved in full-time or part-time ministry. You got a place to work, maybe a desk or an office. You got an email and a title, whatever that title might be. You got the support of the church behind you as you do your part to fulfill the Great Commission and see the vision of the church manifested. You're so excited. And then within about the first 90 days, for some of us it was the first week or two, you run into your first staff meeting or one-on-one meeting that sends you reeling. You walk into a room with a smile, a zeal for seeing the kingdom of God established in your community, and you end up walking out crushed, disillusioned, confused, betrayed, and ready to quit. I coach with a lot of people, and I would guess that about a third of our conversation is dealing with meetings and the fallout that's occurred from that. Ministry would be easy if we didn't have to deal with the drama of those nasty, nasty meetings. So how do we get through those tough meetings? Because whether you want to admit it or not, they're not going away anytime soon. So in today's podcast, I want to walk you through a couple of different scenarios of meetings and share some personal stories as well. Then I want to challenge you with the ways to work through these elements after the meeting, both in the natural and the supernatural. It happens. You walk in on an unsuspecting meeting and walk out wishing you had just stayed home. Let's talk about some of the different meetings. I have 11 of them listed that I've been part of, and maybe you can identify with them. Let's start with the most common one I hear about when I do coaching. Number one, the Invalidated Meeting. This is the meeting that you go into to discuss a particular event or ministry experience and walk out feeling like you had no say in it at all. The Invalidated Meeting. I was talking with a kids director a while back that told me she went into a meeting to discuss the fall kids event. This was her first year in charge, even though she'd volunteered previously and was excited to share some ideas with the team. There were 5 other staff members present. She had her list. She was excited. She had talked with a couple of people before and got their ideas. She talked with a lead pastor in their one-on-one meeting, and he said he wanted her to share those ideas in the next staff meeting as they planned out what that fall kids event was going to look like. Her excitement was crushed as she was given the role of note taker. Everyone else talked and she took notes. She tried to share some thoughts, but was ignored. At one point, another staff person looked at her and said, "Well, this year, you just got to learn how to do it. You can add those ideas next year once you've had a little bit of experience behind you." She questioned one of the elements as it felt unsafe, and she was completely ignored, even on the safety aspect. The pastor then started delegating responsibilities to people and determined who would oversee each part, emphasizing that they would be working with this kids director. Then he looked at this director, who was halfway between tears and profanity, and said, "This will be a good opportunity for you to learn from the people in this room and let us see your heart in being a team player." Within 10 minutes after the meeting, I got a text, "Are you available to talk?" This is a kids director who had previously experienced doing these events at other churches, had played in this role before in this church, and had been on staff in this role for almost 6 months. Yet she left feeling completely invalidated. Have you ever felt that way? How about this one, meeting number 2, the Unheard Meeting, where no one listens to you or asks your opinions. Someone literally interrupts you before you get a chance to even complete any thought that you're trying to share. What you have to say seems like it means nothing. You wonder why you're even there. Or even when you're allowed to speak, is it like no one even heard a word you were saying? You have good ideas. They just might not be the best ideas, but they're still ideas worth discussing, right? So why is it that no one hears me? The unheard meeting. Or maybe this one, number 3, the overwhelmed meeting. This is the one where you just got assigned everything. Okay, you got drafted to do more than you should have. You already feel stressed. Now you just got dumped a whole bunch more on you. And sometimes it have nothing to do with your ministry. It's another event that's happening, or something else is going on, or maybe somebody quit. And congratulations, boom, you just got overwhelmed. And it looks like everyone in the room is going to just let you take it all, and yet they're still going to take credit for it. The meeting where you get volunteered to work extra hours, do extra events, extra volunteers, extra energy for something that's nowhere in your job description, vision, or even something that you would attend if given the choice. The overwhelmed meeting. How about this one? Number 4, the wasted meeting. We've all been in this one, right? Where nothing really got accomplished, where there may or may not have been a good discussion, but no one really knows what the result of the meeting was. You walk out going, I have no idea. I mean, I've talked about these in some of our other podcasts before, meetings without a clear direction or purpose. You talk and talk in circles, nothing gets done. And usually these meetings, for some reason, seem to go longer than anticipated, and nothing redeemable comes out of them. How do you walk out of that meeting without your frustration level going through the roof? Or how about this one? Maybe you're asked to make a presentation at this meeting. You put together a proposal. You look up way too much stuff. You put time putting everything together. You get quotes, and all of it is completely disregarded. Maybe it's not even discussed, and it feels like your time was completely wasted. I've had this happen so many times. All I can say is, sorry, but you better be ready for it, because the wasted meetings are going to happen. Times where I got quotes, put together slides, brought in examples, or even people to present, all for nothing. A complete waste. Number 5, the do-over meeting. What do you mean by that one? The meeting that you wish you could make a do-over, but you'll never get the chance to do it. That's the one where you didn't get to say what you wanted to or needed to say because, well, you weren't quick enough on your feet. Or worse yet, maybe you said something that you shouldn't have said, and now you don't know how to take it back. Maybe you commented in a disrespectful way that now has consequences to it. You accepted something that you shouldn't have, or said no to something that you should have said yes to. You made a poor choice, and now there are consequences for it. You don't have to rebuild trust with another staff member, or might have to hurt a possibility of advancement within your organization. You came across in a way that maybe you shouldn't have. You made a joke about the pastor's sermon. Oops. You insulted another staff person. Not good. You used an inappropriate phrase or story. You're beating yourself up and wish you had a do-over card, that you could use like your get out of jail free card, right? That you could wake up and realize it was just a horrible dream. Nope. Now what? What about this one? The awkward meeting. This is the one you walk into and it goes from chit chat to ice cold in seconds. Number 6, the awkward meeting. When the tension in the room is so thick, you can cut it with a knife. When there's a battle between 2 other staff people and you're stuck in the middle. You're quiet. You want to hide. You don't know what to say. Staff member 1 and staff member 2, they're going at it, and you have a front row seat to the awkward. The worst part is when your lead pastor or their spouse is ripping another staff member to pieces for no reason. And it may or may not be valid, but it should never be aired in a public meeting like this. The best thing that you can do is stay quiet, but that will still mess up your day. Take it up a level. If the 2 going at it are related, maybe you have staff members who are husband and wife, or parent and child, or siblings. Man, family drama in the middle of a staff meeting, yikes, it can get crazy. And as much as it should not be happening, it is that awkward moment. That goes hand in hand with number 7, the conflict resolution meeting, where you have to have a tough conversation with someone, or maybe they have to have that tough conversation with you, where you have to work out your differences. Hopefully this isn't in a full-blown staff meeting with everybody else there. Hopefully it's one-on-one. But these meetings are usually most stressful kind of leading up to them than actually the participation in them. And they can be stressful afterwards depending on what the consequences or the decisions were, what the feelings were that came out during this process. And then there's nothing worse than finishing one of these meetings on a really high note and then having the whole office hate you hours later based on the conversations that occurred after the meeting when you thought everything was okay and it still wasn't. And if you're the one the subject matter was regarding, you could feel trapped or ambushed. You might be looking for a way to justify yourself, to just say what you need to say to get out of the meeting. Are you really listening to what's being discussed? Let's move on to number 8. The stabbed in the back meeting. Okay, this is a meeting that you went into where you and another staff member were on the same page, maybe about to share something when suddenly you're no longer on the same page. Or where that person who got you all excited about an idea now wants nothing to do with it or takes all the credit for it, or the one who said they were ready to back you all the way and they didn't. The person that you trusted that now makes you look like a fool. Betrayal, hurt feelings, and the desire to literally stab them in the face. Don't do that, okay? Which goes right along with number 9, what I like to call the under the bus meeting. This is one where you are now the one getting chewed out in a public meeting instead of in private where it should be. Or you get sideswiped by another staff member in public instead of a one-on-one discussion, where you feel like you just got thrown under the bus for no reason and now they're backing up to do it again. I remember going through a season in our church where finances were tight. I was on staff at a large church with a $7 million budget. We were in the middle of a building project, overstaffed. Giving was overall up, but in regards to ministry budgets, they were down. And some staff members, they were just untouchable. And so, at least it felt that way, right? And so I walked into a staff meeting at 9 a.m. and there were 10 or 11 other pastors and department heads around the table and got handed my budget with the actual year-to-date expenses on there. And none of us knew the tone of the meeting, but it wasn't very often that this particular group of 10 or 11 people got together. So I started looking over my statements before the meeting even started. And immediately I noticed a significant error on there. My staffing expenses, those for childcare workers and nursery staff, they were incorrectly coded in my ministry budget. So in other words, my ministry budget, what I use for snacks and crafts and those kind of things, also had the money from my staff included in there. 2 separate lines, 2 separate areas. And I honestly had very little to say in the staffing budget other than watch your hours, right? I controlled my ministry budget and did a pretty good job of making sure I stayed under the number at the bottom of the page, for each month. The error should have been easy to fix, but it appears as if I had been grossly misspending because of how much money was being taken out of the wrong budget line. I walked over to the executive pastor who oversaw our finance and operations, and I let him know what had happened. He looked at it, he agreed with the mistake, and made notes to adjust it accordingly after the meeting. Then it happened. Our lead pastor came in and started in on us about finances. He actually started showing slides on the screen in the room, which of course was created by that executive pastor that I just spoken with, and showed everyone that our budgets were off. Then he proceeded to point out to everyone my gross mistake. He called me out for gross mismanagement of the budget and wanted an explanation in front of the entire team. After I caught my breath from the shock of all of this, I explained that I had noticed it and already had a discussion with that executive pastor of finance, by the way, who was sitting there very quietly and certainly not coming to my back, and that we were going to fix it. That I was actually under budget in both of these categories had they been coded properly. But I was the example. 3 more times in that meeting, as he got everyone's cases, he referenced my inability to run a budget within the parameter set and threw into all kinds of things. I felt betrayed by the other pastor who refused to say a word the entire time, by my lead pastor who never once mentioned this beforehand and continued to slander me even though the information that he'd been given was incorrect. And the reality that the real budget issue was in 2 very specific ministry areas that were out of my control, that other staff people were over, and it was never addressed. I walked out of that meeting ready to quit. I mean, there were tire marks all over my chest. Have you had a meeting like that before? What about this one, number 10? The you are in trouble meeting. You know what I'm talking about? Honestly, you probably did or didn't do something that has you in a situation right now. All of us have been in that meeting where we're being corrected for something. Maybe our boss is nice about it, or they're strict. Maybe passive aggressive, or maybe overly aggressive. There was a mistake made or a poor performance or something that needs to change. You might be aware of it or not, but no one wants to be in one of those meetings. going to get a reprimand, maybe a write-up, a last warning, a look of disapproval. I've been a staff member. I've seen staff members cry over yearly reviews where I thought I was being incredibly nice, because disciplinary meetings are tough, whether you're leading them or whether you're in them. Let's be honest. Many of you go into every meeting thinking that you're in trouble for something. You get that email asking you to meet with the lead pastor at 2:30 today, and you start cleaning out your desk, right? It feels like you've been called to the principal's office. I used to feel that way as well, until all of a sudden I had an incredible lead pastor that helped me see the confidence that I can have in the job that I'm doing, where now I don't go into meetings afraid that my job's on the line. I go into meetings to talk about real ministry. And if there is a mistake, then let's work through it. You see, this is the meeting where you're in trouble, right or wrong. You have to work your way through it. You have to handle it correctly in the moment and then after the moment. This could be a violation of an HR policy, a misuse of facilities, an upset volunteer, a productivity issue, or a question of your character. These are never fun, but they have to happen whether you're in church or honestly in any job that you work at. Which leads us to our last one right here, number 11, the termination meeting. There are two different kinds of these. This is one where you either voluntarily resign or they are letting you know that you are the one involuntarily resigning because they're letting you go. Both are stressful and have all kinds of consequences. If you're resigning, what does that look like? How will that be taken? Just how do you choose to share it and what not to share in that particular meeting? Who is telling the complete truth in this meeting? Most people feel like they're letting down their employer and they have a sense of self-condemnation in that kind of meeting. They walk out with relief, but then don't know how to respond to the people in that meeting after the meeting. Or the other one is where they let you go, where they fire you. That could be due to performance, budget cuts, integrity issues, or honestly, you just upset somebody and you're getting fired for it. I mean, how do you handle it? What do you say? What do you do now to take care of your family? How do you deal with the hurts and whether it was your fault or not? I remember being laid off in corporate America during the 2008 recession with a massive company restructuring, downsizing. The vice president sat at my desk and shared the news with me, then got up to leave, and I stopped him. I told him, hey, I understood. I also told him that I cared about my staff, and since he was now overseeing this office, there was some things that he needed to know. And over the next 90 minutes, I downloaded everything to help him and the staff succeed, or at least survive, even though I knew I wasn't going to be part of the future. I could have freaked out, but why? I wanted to leave with honor, and I did. What if you're the one doing the termination? Well, make sure you've got it all worked out beforehand. Know what will be said and what the actions will be. This is truly a time to remember that this is a real person and you need to act accordingly. Okay, so you're in the meeting. Okay, let's walk through some tips right now to get you through the meeting and then discuss what to do after the meeting. We looked at 11 different types of meetings. Here's what you need to do when you're in that meeting itself, what kind of meeting that it is. Some basic tips. The first one, you need to breathe. And under your breath, you need to pray. It's really easy to react, but just calm yourself. The second one is listen. Listen to what they're saying. Don't be quick to react. Don't be quick to say something. Don't hear something else that's not being said. Listen. Ask questions to clarify. Find out what they mean when they say that. Specifically, if you're getting in trouble for something or if you're being terminated, make sure you ask specific questions in regards to it. Don't leave it up in the air. Take notes. I never go into a meeting without a notepad and a pen. I never know when I just need to pause and start writing stuff and start writing the information that's being given to me. And then finally ask for a follow-up meeting to discuss it further. Because I guarantee you, once you walk out of that meeting, your brain's going to start processing it. They have already had lots of time to process what that meeting looks like. You're the one who got completely caught off guard. So ask for a follow-up meeting. Say, hey, I would just really like some time to think over this, to pray about it, to process this. Can we meet again later today at 3 or tomorrow at 2? Set up a specific time to have that follow-up meeting. Don't leave it up in the air or leave it up to them. Put something specific down. Okay, so here's what you don't do after the meeting, okay? Don't walk outside this office and blow up publicly, throwing things, yelling, cussing, saying things that you can never take back, okay? Also, don't do this. Don't jump on social media. Don't pick up your phone and text people or post things out there. Don't comment on other people's posts. They'll be like, what is going on? Okay, you do not need to be on social media when you're all emotional like that. Don't call people that are going to feed the fire. You know that one person, if you complain to, you'll be like, I always knew they were that way. You know, you're such a great person. I can't believe they would do that. And you need to do something about this now. If I was you, I would go in there right now and I would get, that is not the person you need to call. Somebody who's going to feed that fire inside of you. On the other side of that, though, you can't ignore it. You're going to have to deal with it. Okay, don't just pretend it didn't happen and walk on the rest of your day. No, that's the reason why we ask about that second meeting, that follow-up time. And then finally, don't do this after the meeting. Don't quit. Okay, give yourself a chance to walk through it. Do not be reactionary and quit off the bat. I've seen people do that. You know what? Didn't go the way I wanted. I'm done. And they walk out. That is not how you want to end. Even if you do decide to quit, don't quit in that moment. So then what should you do after the meeting? That's a great question. Let me give you some tips on that one, okay? Again, take a moment, go for a walk. You know, I used to have a place on our church campus. There was a baseball field behind our campus. And when I'd have one of those rough meetings, I would go out and I'd walk over to that baseball field. And I walked around it a couple times and no one was out there. I'd go stand behind the bleacher area where no one could see me. And I would just pray loudly. Okay, I would talk through it loudly. I would choose somebody out loudly with no one else around. But I would take a moment. I would step away. Honestly, sometimes I'd pause. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I just wonder what happened. No matter what you do, though, take that moment and step out of your current situation. Breathe, pray, pause, and go forward. Remind yourself about who you are in Christ, your calling, your identity. It's really easy to beat yourself up in that kind of situation. Your identity didn't change. God still called you. God still has a plan for your life. You're still God's kid. Okay, remind yourself of who you are. Then begin to process the information. Let it begin to go through your head. And all of us process differently. Some people write, some people, they draw things, they talk, whatever that is. Allow the information to start being processed. Give yourself that minute to do so. Call someone that you trust and who will listen to you. Maybe they'll tell you, you know what? You made a wrong choice. Or maybe they'll have your back. Whatever the case is, though, you need that one person that you can trust to talk to. Look for the truth in the conversation. If there are faults that are yours, accept them. And then figure out, okay, how can I change them? How can I change me? Okay, find the truth from that and move on. Look for the best in the person who wronged you. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who has it against you. I mean, even your parents at times throw you under the bus. Look for the best in those people. Look for ways to fix what you have control over. If there is something that you can fix it. When I found out about the budget issue, I went in and fixed it. So you need to look for the steps that are going to solve this, the justice part of it, right? Okay, how are we going to get this corrected? You also need to look at things that need addressed, the injustice. You know what? This is not correct. This is not what occurred. This is not the way this meeting should have went. The injustice element on there. And finally, you need to have a follow-up discussion. And let me tell you, that follow-up discussion needs to be in person. It's not a phone call. It's not a text. It's not an email. It's not a social media connection. It's not even a Zoom call. It needs to be in person as much as possible to talk through what that looks like. So after each of these meetings, I look for an opportunity to work on myself. Okay, and so I want to give you 4 different ways that you can work on yourself through this. The first one is this. What caused me to be in this meeting in the first place? Like why did I end up in this situation? Sometimes there's meetings that I've gotten into that I've been, I don't need to be in this meeting and I don't need to be in this situation. I've been a part of certain staff meetings that weren't even over my area that were unhealthy. I pulled myself out of it. What caused me to be in that situation? What caused me to get thrown on the bus or be hurt by that person? What caused the circumstances leading up to it? Which leads me to the second question. What can I change in me to help me respond differently in the future? Maybe I need to work through some insecurities in my life. I need to be a little less defensive. I need to be less reactionary, a little proactive versus reactionary. Or what about fear, rejection? What are the inner battles? What are the inner voices within you that caused you to maybe react or respond in a certain way that not only necessarily got you in this situation, but left you actually in a worse situation by the time the meeting got over? You know, I will say I've had a lot of years of meeting, and the only thing that I've had any control over in the midst of all of that is me. So I work on me all the time. Number 3, What can I learn from this meeting to help myself or other colleagues in the future? So for example, I worked for a pastor who let us run our own ministry. He really gave us a lot of freedom to run over our areas. He gave us free reign. But on occasion, he would suddenly go into like 400 questions or micromanaging type role. And I realized that something had come up that caused him to not trust my judgments. And so rather than getting defensive, I would overeducate him on what was going on to restore that trust. Then I would know that he knew that I knew what I was doing. And this happened a couple of times a year and always ended on a positive note once I figured out I just need to help him trust me again. The fourth one is this: who am I? Remember, you're still God's kid. That your identity is based in him and not on the outcome of this meeting. Go back to the word. Go back to prayer. During some of the hardest seasons of my life, and by that I mean the churches where I had the hardest meetings, right? I always had verses on standby, encouraging people on standby, a worship song on standby, ways to work through the challenges. You see, meetings are going to happen. Good meetings, bad meetings. And if you're the one in charge of the meetings, you better be polishing your leadership skills so that the other people aren't watching this podcast thinking about you. Either way, you need a coach, an outside voice who can help you be there for you and listen. Someone who can give you advice or remind you the right choices you already know, but you're having a clouded emotion in the moment. I'd love to help you out. To find out more about our coaching opportunities, go to www.freshmin.org. Whether you're a kids or student leader, an executive or family pastor, or even a senior or lead pastor. You know how many lead pastors I've had call me over the years regarding a particular situation they wanted my insight on before they went into a tough meeting with their staff people? I would love to be on the other end of that conversation with you. So, give me a call. Let's see if we can work through it. I would love to help. And so as we end, I want to end with this: Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. Here's the key to your response when it comes to entering, being in, and exiting that meeting, whatever one of those 11 meetings that it is. Galatians 5:22. But the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There's no law against these things. The best thing that you can do in your life before and after the meeting is, with the assistance of the Holy Spirit, develop the fruit of the Spirit in your life. You can make it. Keep your head up. Learn from each experience. And remember who you are. You can do it.